Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Ray Hennessy, along with my co host, as always, Scott Keys. We
Good
have a
afternoon.
great talk tonight. We'll have our friend Josh Galicki joining us to discuss his recent trip to the Falkland Islands. It's just going to be an amazing place. It was an amazing place from what we can see, and I can't wait to kind of go through all these images with him and hear a lot more about it. Josh spent nearly 2 weeks at this awesome chain of islands off the eastern coast of the southern tip of South America. So, with the islands being somewhat close to Antarctica, Josh was able to see and photograph a wide variety of penguin species, as well as a lot of different pelagic birds and marine mammals. So, needless to say, Scott and I were a little bit jealous as he was giving us updates during this trip. We definitely debated kicking him out of our private group because we were getting sick of seeing all these awesome images. I'm only joking here, but so in just a moment, we'll get right into it and see some of his spectacular photos. But I do just have a couple things I want to mention before we get started here. So, first off, to anyone that wants to watch the talk again or can't stay the entire time, the recorded video will be available on my YouTube channel shortly after we wrap up. So, if you're not already, please subscribe over there, and that way you can be notified when we share all these future videos. And then, secondly, Scott and I have been talking, and we realized that we kind of do these talks randomly, so it's hard for people to set a schedule and be able to join us. So we're actually going to try our best. We can't promise this, but we are going to try our best to turn this into something a little bit more scheduled. And our goal is going to be a bi-weekly schedule every Wednesday. So 2 Wednesdays from now, we're going to try and do this again, and so on and so on. So as long as we can keep that up and nothing else conflicts with our schedules, that's going to be the schedule with these shows going forward. So hopefully you can kind of be aware of that and join in a little bit more based on that schedule. So we're going to do it every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard will be the new talk.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that. So having a scheduled date, I think, will be helpful. And for tonight, once we're going to turn over to Josh in just a minute. But as always, leave comments. You can leave questions for Josh in there. Ray and I have a selection of questions as well for him. But if there's anything you're curious about or anything you want follow up on, drop them in the comments. I'll try to keep an eye on comments as we go live. And without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Josh. So Josh, just to get us started, just talk to us a little bit about why the Falklands and maybe any kind of inspiration that you had or the reason that you chose that as a destination.
Yeah, sure thing. And Ray and Scott, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it and look forward to the talk. So thanks again. Yeah, the Falklands, I've seen shots over the years of penguins, albatross, and a lot of unique birds, the sea lions and the like. And I'm like, wow, I've always wanted to see them. You see the lighting down there. I always thought that, when you go that far south, I've been to the Arctic before, up north, and I remember the light was just incredible.
Yeah.
Spending time with all these rare birds, eiders and the like, and I wanted to recreate that experience with penguins and a lot of these other unique species that are further south. So there was always kind of a drive to get there and do that. And I knew the Falklands is probably a good place to start. I get seasickness really easy, and the Falklands you can actually fly into and see a lot of these species. So that was
Nice.
That was my destination of choice for a while.
Now that makes sense. So you live in the northeast of the U.S. How long was the travel to get there? Was it how many days? What was that like?
Yeah, it actually took us 2 days to get there, which was interesting.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah, we had to go through Chile, and then from Chile we had to get over to the Falklands. The tricky thing about the Falklands, there's a flight that goes in only once a week. It happens every Saturday. So
Oh, wow.
we had to make sure that we're in Chile by Friday to leave Saturday morning to get that flight to the Falklands. Of course, if you miss the flight, half of your trip is wasted.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, we wanted to have some insurance, and so we went down there through Chile. It takes a little while, but when you get there, it's definitely well worth it. And you, without question, feel like you're off the grid for the most part. I mean, I've been
Which is a great thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when it comes to spending time with wildlife.
Yeah.
I was in Alaska a couple years ago. I was in the Seward Peninsula and up on the Arctic slope, and for whatever reason, you're definitely off the grid there, but in the Falklands, it even feels that you're off the grid more so, which is a really unique experience.
I would assume part of that has to just be kind of be due to being surrounded by water, just the whole island experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not many folks on the island, and it's just very remote. We spent some time actually. went to two places. I went down with a good friend of mine, Sujinder Patola. He's a great photographer. And when we went down, we decided to spend time in two spots: Volunteer Point in East Falkland, which is the only colony for king penguins. So you had to go there. King penguin is like one of the best birds down there.
Yeah.
And we went to this other spot called New Island, which actually the island is owned by a friend of ours. It was in her family for many years. It's in a trust right now. She hosted us, and the only way I could describe it reminded me of like Skull Island from like King Kong.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We actually have a question already from somebody that I guess was there this past year. So Jim asked, he said in January, many of the Gentoo chicks at the, what did he say? The chicks seemed to be sick with spots that looked maybe like some type of bird pox. Did you notice anything with the Gentoo chicks there when you were there?
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I didn't.
Okay.
But we did photograph and spend some time with a lot of chicks. The behavior, I have to say, was like extremely funny. The parents would come back to feed the chicks. You know, they'd feed some of the chicks, and the chicks were still hungry, and they would actually start chasing the parents, and the parents would like run for their lives. It was pretty comical.
Nice, nice. So, Scott, you want to hit a question? Oh, I wonder if we lost Scott.
Yeah, well, I got you.
Oh, okay.
So,
good.
Josh, when you're preparing for the trip, just take everybody through the kind of gear that you brought with you, and for those that are planning on traveling with a lot of gear, did you scale it down for a trip like that, knowing that it would be kind of a lot of time on the plane and getting down to the destination?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we knew the wildlife was fairly tame. When you look at photos from the Falklands, people are shooting penguins at 24 millimeters, sometimes 60 millimeters. Sometimes you see stuff with a fisheye. So I packed fairly light. I didn't bring, a 600 millimeter telephoto. The longest focal length I had was 400 millimeters. I had a 100 to 400 that I actually shot with most of the trip. And then I had a 16 to 35, and I had a 24 to 70, and just a flash component and two camera bodies. So I packed pretty light. I didn't want to pack too heavy because traveling and moving, in many cases you have to walk miles to these colonies and get to certain spots.
Oh, interesting.
So
okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be as light as I could.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So when you were going to some of these different areas, were you bringing everything that you brought with you, or did you kind of have an idea of, hey, we're going to this specific colony, this is going to be more of a 1 to 400 thing or more of a wide angle thing, or you just brought all the gear and because you didn't really know what to expect?
Yeah, in most cases I brought everything.
Okay.
The biggest decision for me was, do I bring a tripod or do I not bring a tripod? I had a backpack. I threw everything in there, and sometimes I'd bring the tripod, sometimes I wouldn't. And then once I got there, I'd take out what I needed and then just, left the backpack. One thing about backpacks, there's a bird down there. A lot of folks in North America know the crested caracara.
Yeah.
It has a southern cousin down there. They call it actually the Johnny Rook. But it's striated caracara.
That's what I thought, yeah.
They actually love backpacks. They come down and they'll pick out my backpack and kind of investigate it. It was pretty funny.
That is wild. So you mentioned, occasionally using or bringing a tripod. Did you find yourself using it often or not really?
Here and there.
Okay.
Early morning, we had an epic morning at Volunteer Point. It was, I think, the second day we were there. We got up. The light came up early there because we were further south. We had to get up at 3:30. We were on the beach at 4 a.m. and there was just this epic sunrise.
Nice.
And as the sun was coming up, we had a group of king penguins actually come out of the water. And it was just like, oh my, yeah, this is actually, that was part of that morning. So I was shooting I think I had a 70 to 200. What did I have? I think it was a 70 to 200 here.
See if I can find
which
out.
was
Yeah.
another lens I had.
There we go. Yeah, 7200.
Yeah, 70 to 200, and I was shooting. What was that? F2.8. I can't remember what I was.
0.008 of a second. 2.8 ISO 2000.
Yeah. So in this case, I wanted to have really good sharpness techniques. I'm like, okay, I got to capture this.
Yeah.
So in that case, I was shooting off of a tripod.
Okay. Cool. So
in those early morning.
All right. So this is the same morning we're looking at right here, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's
cool. So this is a great question then. So. Obviously, a huge difference in the look of these two photos. I certainly know why, but can you explain a little bit of the difference on, like your approach and what equipment you use to kind of completely change the look of the same scene?
Yeah, sure. So we could start with the one to the right, just because that was earlier. So the one to the right, that was pre-dawn. The sun did not yet come up. and these king penguins were coming in and out of the surf. So I saw them and I'm like, okay, they're about to come to shore. So I set up where they would come directly at me. And of course, once you expose for the sky in the back as the sun was coming up, you know, you have your shutter's fast enough to get that, and it's a fairly bright highlight in the scene. So I attached a small flash, and I popped the flash out to really bring the penguins out as they were coming to shore. That's awesome. I think it really added a nice effect to it. I mean, certainly it looks. I always say when you use flash, you know, the viewer should say, oh, you know, you can't tell if you use flash. In this case, I think the viewer sees that, yeah, he used flash, but it adds a bit of an artistic effect. Yeah,
definitely. So there's a couple things.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple things I notice. They have an incredibly reflective feather, you know. It's like you can tell there wasn't much flash power going on there, but especially in the highlight areas their feathers are highly reflective. And then the second thing I notice is obviously the flash just really brings out the reflection, which is key there, because that's obviously an important part of this great image. So
yeah,
Josh, was there anything that you wish you had brought along that you didn't?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't think so. Maybe if I had a fisheye, I could come up with some really cool compositions. But at that point, you know, I'm wondering, well, how close you could get really close to these birds. But at a certain point, you can only get so close. Maybe if I had a fisheye, maybe I would play around with some kind of interesting compositions. But other than that, I was pretty satisfied in terms of what I had. I have to say, I'm so glad I did not bring a 600 millimeter. I would have lugged that thing around and probably used it once or twice.
Just no need for it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're out there, are you pretty much the only ones out there, you and your friend that you were shooting with a guide, or are you just kind of investigating areas on your own?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when it comes to a guide, I have to say we decided, you know, Sujinder and I, and we were working with another good friend of ours, Santosh. He was going to come as well. We essentially put the itinerary, or actually more Sujinder and Santosh. They put the itinerary together. We decided not to use a guide for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to basically go and shoot whenever we wanted to. We really didn't want to be caught up with the whim of a group of like 7 or 8 people. We wanted to be pretty greedy in terms of the light we wanted to use and how early we were going to get out and where we were going to shoot, because we knew the wildlife is essentially fairly tame there.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of needing a guide to put us on the bird or anything like that.
Sure.
And also we wanted to, you know, frankly, save money. We, you know, you look at some of the tours down in the Falklands, people spend a mint to go down there, and that's fine. But we figured we can probably get away with doing a trip for, you know, a couple $1,000s if possible. So that was kind of our decision to go without the guide. Now, when we were shooting in Volunteer Point at the King Penguin colony, this shot was actually taken at the colony. Yeah. It was Sujinder and myself, and that was it.
Wow.
It was real. It was.
So, do you have any videos of from there?
Yeah, actually, if
hey, let me hop over here. Oops. That looks like a whole massive. Oh yeah, there's a time lapse.
Yeah, that was actually at the King Penguin colony. I brought my GoPro camera and just set it up on a tripod.
Oh, that's awesome.
And let it go a half hour or so. And I thought it was kind of cool. You can kind of see these birds kind of maneuver around. Yeah, it's a nice little window in terms of what their life looks like.
That's sheep back there I see wandering around?
Yeah, it is, actually. And they're, believe it or not, they're more scared of people than the birds are, or whatever.
That's really funny.
And is there courtship behavior? Like, what are they doing? Like, it looks like they're just kind of jostling around for position, and every now and then it looks like they raise their head and call.
That's exactly right for the king penguins. They'll raise their head up and they'll kind of call, and the female will come over. At times they'll cross their bills, actually, which is something I wanted to get in that shot you just had on.
Oh, right here, yeah.
They unfortunately didn't cross bills, but I just settled for that because the sun was going down in the back.
It's a shame you had to settle for that. Yeah, so that's tough.
Yeah, settle for that.
Yeah, I think most of us would settle for that. Yeah. I'm just gonna hit one of these videos. That's another time lapse.
The light was super incredible down there.
Yeah.
This is I did this on my GoPro. Actually, it kind of has like somebody said it's got like a City of Angels kind of look, which was kind of a late '90s cheap film with Nicholas Cage. But this was after I was that morning with the king penguins coming in and out. What they would do, they would go into the water come back out, go into the water, come back out. They were just kind of playing around.
Oh, really?
So I had so many opportunities with them pre-dawn and after the sun came up.
Wow.
And at this point, the sun was out, the light was getting a little harsh, so I decided to do a little video. And you could see, I mean, they are just really carefree in my presence. They're just kind of bouncing around, and it really was amazing. Now the weather is what's special down in the Falklands, and I think that's what makes the light so good. You go from 50-mile-an-hour winds, pouring rain, to sun, back to the wind, and it creates all these dynamics, and you get rainbows and you get dark skies with golden light, and it was just so much fun to play around with, stuff that I'm just not used to getting up here.
Yeah.
What was the temperature like this time of year?
It was about probably 45 degrees to 55 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And it could be, the wind added a little bit more of a chill, but it wasn't all too bad.
Oh, that doesn't sound bad at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's summer down there.
Yeah,
so.
I think
Or what?
if I recall, you had a video. This might be it, of just showing off like the insane wind and sand. This is what you call.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge down there. They call them sandstorms. And when you're on the beach, they're at this particular spot. This was Volunteer Point. Gentoo Penguins come to shore, and maybe folks have seen, they'll kind of surf and they'll just like jump to the shoreline. So I was trying to capture that, but when the wind comes, this sand just blows all over the place, gets in your camera gear, gets in your eyes. So I had to shoot almost all of these shots with a plastic bag over the camera, and it makes it difficult. It makes it fun because it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those are actually some of my favorite images that you shot. So here's a great example, right? That's one of them.
Yeah, that's a Gentoo Penguin coming to shore. And they kind of surf. It's wild, when they come. And it's hard to capture, too, because they'll pop right out of the water. This is actually four Gentoo Penguins, and they're actually riding the wave.
That's
and I thought that was
incredible looking, yeah.
Yeah. There's one
That's
under
awesome.
a wave.
Yeah, that's...
And they'll just kind of like come right out and splash out of the water, and you just have to be there at the right moment.
Yeah.
And are there two penguin species down there that you got?
Yeah, at at Volunteer Point, there were Gentoo Penguins, Magellanic Penguins, and King Penguins. Those were the three.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, Magellanic are a little smaller. They look like some other species that you'd find like South Africa and Australia.
That's
and so forth.
these guys right here, right?
Exactly, yeah. They make noise. I mean, they just belt.
Which is what that one's doing right there, yeah.
We could barely sleep. They just go all night, but pretty impressive.
Oh,
These
colors are just off the charts, man.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, my hands were even shaking. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this shot, because
it changes quick, right?
Yeah, and you almost get really nervous because you're like, this is so good, I need to capture this.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the back of my LCD, and I'm like, oh my God, please, So it was a lot of fun, but it was exciting too because the light changed so much. We went from kind of pre-dawn to these colors, and then we got these awesome pastels on the Kings, like maybe a little while after the sun came up, and it was just fantastic. It really was.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit more of what that is what you're talking about with the pastels. Yeah, that's incredible.
And then two over to the right, Ray, from that one. If you go over,
oh yeah, wow,
yeah, this one
that's awesome.
So that's a great flash mix there. That one is actually a little bit more naturally blended in. So I think that one works really well.
Yeah, a little bit of fill flash. And this was tough. I had an incredible sequence of them coming out of the water. The reason why I used this shot, the surf actually came above them. As you could see, their reflections are in the water, but they were so close to me, and I couldn't control it.
Yeah.
I didn't capture all of their reflections. This one I liked because the surf was there, and the reflections were distorted, so it didn't look cut off to me.
Gotcha,
so that was the reason.
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And then I know from, little experience that I've had with groups of birds, photographing flocks and groups like this is really difficult. You have one subject, just a single isolated bird. You can really concentrate on that bird alone and, wait for head positions on that. When you're working with a group, I mean, to keep your eye on all of them to make sure they're doing the right thing, it's a lot of work.
A lot. I pretty much set my camera at f8.
Yeah.
And then I would try to put my focus point in the middle of the scene or in the bird that I thought was kind of in the middle of the focal plane, or shoot when I thought they were kind of all in the same focal plane or close to it.
Yep.
And I just had to cross my fingers.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, look at that. Yeah, that's just incredible.
So in addition to the penguins, what were some of the other highlight species, things maybe you hadn't seen before or just were looking forward to seeing and you ended up getting a chance to see them?
Yeah, for me, it was probably a lot of people, don't like these birds. I love skuas. For people who know me, I like Jaegers and skuas for some reason. They're like the most hated birds. They're really bully birds. It's basically a honey badger with wings. They have no fear. They attack anything. They'll go after, large mammals. In the north, Jaegers attack reindeer. I mean, it's pretty wild. They're fearless creatures. So I really wanted to see these skuas.
Nice.
Actually got some really good action. They will actually go after the penguins. They'll eat the penguin chicks. I know that's definitely not a popular thing for people who like penguins, but they're just really cool.
These are just brown gulls, right? Right? These are just big brown gulls.
That's what most people would say. There's a subtle beauty in everything, I guess. I guess more the beauty on the inside for these birds, but they're real. It's more in the personality, put it that way.
Yeah.
So just so you know, Josh talks about these birds all the time. Like when we talk about like what
Yes.
the coolest raptor is, and I'm talking about like falcons and golden eagles. Josh always brings these birds up, telling me that one of these birds could take out like a golden eagle or something, which I still debate.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit of exaggeration. What really got me on these birds, they have a cousin. It's a Pomeranian Jaeger.
Yeah, they're
And I saw
beautiful.
hell out of a snowy owl up in the Arctic, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. We got to witness some aerial battles, but ever since then, I kind of was hooked on these birds.
So I want to jump back to this Rockhopper here real quick, because I know this is definitely a style of lighting you really like to kind of take advantage of when it happens. Can you kind of just describe how you approach this setup?
Yeah, sure. So this was taken on New Island, and this was the second piece of the trip. Our friend Georgina White, her father, really cool story. He bought this island back in the 70s. It's probably the prettiest island in the whole Falkland Islands chain. It's got awesome mountains and cliffs and these, I mean, it kind of, as I said before, kind of looks like Skull Island from like King Kong. And we were on the island when we got there. She hosted us with a Nat Geo crew. And the Nat Geo crew, they're filming, I don't think, it might be a new Planet Earth or some sort of new series. It's going to come out a few years from now. But they went down to this colony where the Rockhopper Penguins were. And we kind of positioned ourselves. It was myself and Sujinder. These penguins were starting to come ashore, and the light was still a little harsh. So what I did, I put myself in a position where there was some shadows and a dark background.
Yeah.
You pose for the whites with some harsh light, and you really get this awesome kind of low-key effect. In this shot, which I was waiting for, these rockhoppers would come up to this particular rock. I was just watching them. I mean, it was like 1, 2, 3, everyone. They'd come up, they'd lean down, and they would hop off the rock.
Nice.
So I would just keep shooting. This one I processed and I like because it just has a real badass look to it,
Yeah,
with
it
the
really
red.
does.
Yeah.
for sure.
And I figured, okay, well, here's a rockhopper on a rock getting ready to jump. So
Tell
now Georgina, who's also an incredible photographer, she's the one who her family, the island's been in her, with her family for years. She shoots on these colonies all the time. She actually looked at some of these shots from when I was there that first day with these rockhoppers, and she's like, wow, she goes, I've been shooting this for years, and I really love this perspective. So she actually went, I think, after I left and captured some shots with this perspective. So it just goes to show that, everybody has like a different eye and a different composition in their mind. So I was pretty honored when she said that, only
sure.
because, shooting there her whole life.
Yeah, definitely. We did have a comment from Lynette. She asked to see the this photo. She wanted to see it kind of zoomed in there. Can you tell us a little bit about this? What's happening there? Obviously, it's a little bit more gory than some may like, but
yeah. So this is
interesting
why skuas are so cool. So there is a sea lion which was pretty badass on New Island. They called him Boris. Boris showed up and decided to eat a whole bunch of penguins the day before I got down to South Beach. And he had a bit of a feast. So when we assume it was Boris, he was kind of hanging out on the beach. We saw him the day before. So he goes down, or a sea lion the same size as Boris goes down, eats a bunch of penguins. And there's a lot of, obviously, leftovers and stuff. There's two birds that really love to feed on them. There were giant petrels and these skuas. So here you actually have a Gentoo penguin. I know it's a Gentoo because you can't see it, but actually the foot pad is to the left of the, unfortunately. But that's actually the vertebrae of a Gentoo, and you have two skuas fighting over the remains of the it looks like there's some meat there on the skull, and then there's kind of a skua watching in the background. Kind of has a bit of an evil look to it,
sure.
And I like the action, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So that I know you had a video of you with that sea lion, right?
Yeah, this actually was another one. This one wasn't Boris,
It was not,
but
okay.
Believe it or not, Boris was about twice the size of this guy.
Wow.
I decided to kind of crawl up, and Georgina said, "Hey, you're probably a little too close." So I said, and that's where he opened his eyes. So I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to back up a little."
Yeah. So
It was pretty cool.
It's tough to see perspective on that one. Ballpark, how what was the size of this one? Compared to you, let's say.
Yeah, a lot bigger, probably the size of me. I'm not that big. If you saw me in person, I'm like 5'7". So yeah, it was really big. Matter of fact, when those the reason why I was getting close, I wanted to get that shot where they open their gape and you can see the canines and everything.
Yeah.
And I haven't processed the shot yet, but their canines are much bigger even than elephant seals, and in my opinion, they were more intimidating. And everybody thinks of the elephant seals as being the creme de la creme, but those sea lions were much more bad, I think, than the elephant seals.
Just a real quick, Lynette had another question on this one. She said, what was the focal point on the skuas, the left one or the skeleton? It looks like it's actually kind of both of these birds' heads and eyes are tack sharp. The skeleton's actually a little bit out in the back there, so it looks like Josh kind of focused on the heads there, which makes sense because that's kind of where all the action's happening, and that's a little bit of a secondary item there. Pete asked,
and then
go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. He was just asking about the sea lions, Josh, and if they're aggressive towards people.
Georgina, who she knows that island, she said if I got any closer, it's probably not a good thing. So I would assume that if I got in the way of that sea lion and the water, that's when they can get pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
If you keep your distance, I just think they kind of look at you and huff and puff and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So.
That's good.
But I wouldn't want to get in the way of that thing in the water. I'll tell you that. I saw what it did to penguins, and I figured it could do a number on me.
Yeah.
I love the light on these shots.
Yeah, that one's just incredible right there. Definitely. So I know.
Funny on that Rockhopper, that one you just had, Ray. It depends. It's what's so cool about that species. It depends on the perspective. You showed a previous shot in low key where it was kind of preening and it looked really badass. We were talking that one.
Yep.
So you could see here. They can either come off as really looking like on the comical. Right, very scared shitless.
Yeah.
I shouldn't, but So you can get a very different perspective in terms of how they look just based on their expressions, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. The one thing I absolutely love about this is just seeing the the rows of I don't even know what the heck you call them in the beak.
And that would be unique to penguins. When you photograph a lot of birds, even gulls and the like, they'll open their gape up and you'll see inside the tongue and the like. But the penguins actually, and maybe it's just even the rockhopper, I don't know, but I noticed several of the rockhoppers had that, and they probably all do. Obviously, they've evolved that way.
Hold on to fish,
Digestion, yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is. So I know we got off track there a little bit. Scott had asked you about some of the different species and stuff. So what do we have here?
This is an easy duck to photograph. It is the flightless steamer duck.
Oh, there you go.
You have a duck that's flightless. It's kind of easy to photograph in a way. This particular, I think this was the female. I mixed them up, but it had the chicks behind, and there was some seaweed there. I thought it was pretty cool, and I just came across this right before I saw that sea lion. And it was just literally just walking by. I kneeled down. I waited a few minutes for them to calm down, and the chicks started to call in the back. So I took a few shots.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Nice. Oh, this is a great intimate moment. What are these? Gentoo, or no?
Yeah, these are Gentoo. And what will happen? The Gentoo, they'll go out to sea. They're the birds that kind of surf the shore, and they'll come and they'll have I think krill and a lot of other different types of fish and the like kind of in their crop. They'll show up, and the chicks will start to, they'll take their bill and they'll nibble on the adult's bill, and they'll kind of cross bills for a while, indicating that they want to be fed. And as you can see here, this is the middle of a feeding exercise.
Yep.
You could see some of the food coming out. It's amazing to see what these birds can actually keep in the crop.
Yeah.
I've seen some of these come in, and they just keep shoving the food out into the chicks. It's like, Jesus. It's not the most pleasant thing. It doesn't look that appetizing, but yeah.
Is this rain in this?
This was
That's a nice one.
Yep. This was a rainstorm. And The one cool thing, when these chicks get to a certain age, they're a good size here. They're really not susceptible to predators anymore, with the exception of sea lions. The caracaras and the skuas will go after the chicks when they're really young, when they're little puffball. At this point, they're chasing the adults after they get fed. It's hysterical.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Nice. So we saw some of these already. Here we go. So these are some of my favorite images. I love these birds.
Oh, yeah. This is the black-browed albatross. And albatross, for the folks aren't too familiar with albatross, they're some of the largest birds on the planet. They're mostly in or maybe exclusively in the southern. No, there's some up north. They're mostly, though, like the wandering albatross, black-browed north-south. They can fly just thousands of miles and maybe flap their wings only a few times. They're graceful flyers.
It's incredible. Yeah.
And once they meet their mate, they mate for life, and they're very intimate. And their mating displays are just beautiful to watch. The bill clacking. This is the middle of a kind of a courtship display, and they'll clack their bills together. And this one I kind of like because they're both facing eye to eye, and I like the shape that underneath.
Yeah, and the dark background really makes the white bird pop off.
Yeah, that's some dark rock there behind the colony. Just extremely graceful birds, and it was just a pleasure to be in their presence, to be honest, watching them fly in and out. It was just amazing.
What's the ballpark wing spread on these guys?
Really long. I think when it comes to wingspan, the bird with the longest wingspan in the world is a close relative to this. It's the wandering albatross.
Yeah, yep.
I want to say 11 feet on the wandering. Yep. This is smaller than that, but I mean, maybe I'm just throwing it out there. I'd have to Wikipedia, maybe between 7 to 10 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
This is an incredible shot. And thankfully, Ray, I conjured you up to take that shot down in the Falklands, that back. For the folks who don't know Ray's work, Ray is one of the best photographers when it comes to these types of lighting situations. I actually thought of you when I took this shot, Ray.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ray helped me process this shot, and the backlighting, the rim lighting on these particular birds, because that's a Rockhopper penguin. The plumes are just, when they light up, it's pretty surreal.
Yeah, they're just glowing like that. We do have a bunch of questions. Pete asks, do you stop down the lens for some of your shots, or are you exclusively wide open? He mentions that it appears that you do stop down your capture for some with the multiple birds, and I would say you probably definitely do, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. In this shot, I'm stopped down. I'm probably...
Yeah, F14. Yep.
Okay, F14.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things that you could do in the Falklands versus a lot of wildlife up here. You get to really make these birds part of a landscape shot because you can get so close.
Yeah.
And in some cases too, like this was with a 24-70. I have some shots where I'm shooting with a 16-35. I'm almost touching the bird with the lens. It doesn't look that way because of the perspective, but you can get very, very close.
16-35. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's a black-browed albatross on top of a colony. You can see a bunch of birds in the background, and this is New Island. And this is why New Island's special. You get these cliffs, and it's very rugged. It's absolutely beautiful, and it makes you think differently about compositions. And that's one thing that was a challenge. A lot of people think, oh, well, if the wildlife is close, it's easy to get good shots. Well, that's true in the sense of getting shots around detail and fill in the frame. But it makes you challenge yourself. It's like, how can I come up with an interesting composition? What other factors can I include in the shot? So you have to really think outside the box, because going down there, for me, at least in my experience, even being in Alaska before, I've never been in a situation that I can get so close and really have so many different options when it comes to composition with these birds. So it makes you really think outside the box. And I think it's helped me. And it's helped me in terms of how I'm going to approach wildlife up here, the stuff that I'm used to shooting, and then I want to get different perspectives on, because you always try to evolve and come up with new things. And this really helped me out a lot, and it made me think of things in a different manner. These are two black-browed, courting on the edge of a cliff.
That's
and
awesome.
It was just surreal. Yeah, this bird kind of, I really like the with the bill open, and there's a sense of dominance of the bird on the left.
Okay.
And it also has a bit of an intimate moment too. And again, you get the cliffs and the lichen in the background.
Yeah,
that particular evening, it was probably the most spectacular sunset I ever saw in my life. We were walking back home from this colony. I want to say it was like a 7-mile walk to go from the island to the other. And we walked back to this sunset. It was absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like it.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, here's something. Here's another one that I really like. You know, you just the way you place the bird right in the kind of opening of the water that comes in there. You know, including these splashes of green on each side and this incredible orange covered rock here. It just this all really comes together nicely. So it just that I think this image really kind of illustrates the point of what you were talking about. There's so much more to think about with a wide angle shot, and I've only barely dabbled in something like that, but I know you touched on it. When you have a bird isolated with just a completely smooth background, if you think about shooting a close-up of this with a longer lens, it doesn't really matter what's back there. It's all just going to be complete blur. It's just going to be a color back there, so it doesn't matter if it's a foot to the left, a foot to the right. Whereas something like this, if you step to the left a foot or drop down or up, the bird's head starts intersecting something back there that it shouldn't. So there's a lot more to think about, and you nailed this one.
Yeah, there's so many different variables. But I mean, the good news is when you're there with New Island and the colors and stuff, it gives you so many options. But that was the same day of that miracle sunset. Actually, it was, oh God, I think I have a video of it, but
nice.
it was striking. Yeah.
Yeah, let's check it out.
I want to say keep going up. No, that was Volunteer Point.
That was okay.
I may not have. Actually, it was that one, that row, Ray. I'm sorry, to the right, that one. Yep.
That one here. Oh yeah, look at that.
So that was the colony, and this was kind of back, and we had these, almost cotton ball looking clouds.
Yeah, look at that.
It's just spectacular. You felt like you're in Lord of the Rings. I felt like, I was, maybe where's Frodo and Sam. I mean, it was insane.
Now, the terrain there looks pretty rocky.
I was just going to say
typical, or is it? Yeah, is it like smooth beach or changing elevations?
Yeah, it was mostly rocky on New Island. The beaches are actually fairly sandy, and the water actually is with good light. The water has like just this really light blue. Light blue color. It's really, really pretty. But for the most part, when you're walking away from the beaches, it's fairly rocky. And there's a lot of this, you don't see it here. There's a lot of patches of tussock grass that can almost be as, up to eye level. It's pretty wild. It makes it look really exotic. That's actually Georgina and my friend Sujinder. We were starting our walk back. It was a 7-mile walk back, and it was the most enjoyable 7 miles I've ever walked.
That's amazing.
That really is incredible. Yeah, I think here's a great example of the kind of just overall scenery you're talking about there. It's just over the top.
Yeah. These are Gentoo penguins jumping in the water. I decided to take a bit of more of a landscape kind of wide angle there.
So other than the sea lion, any other mammals?
We did elephant seals, actually. On the last day of our trip, we went down to this place called Elephant Point, which is in the Falklands. This was actually Penguin Road, I call this one. We were coming back from the South Beach in New Island, and a lot of the shots, I want to say, are kind of planned, or I have a shot envisioned. And, we were just walking back, and these Gentoos were in front of us, and I was catching up a little bit. I didn't want to walk too close, because then I would kind of spook them, and they'd walk off the path. Yeah. And they just all continued to go, and I just took a few shots, and I really liked how this shot came out. The coloring, even when these birds are, they have their back to you, it's very unique. These roads, Georgina was telling us that these penguins actually breed in these colonies year after year for, many, many years, hundreds of years, who knows, maybe thousands of years. And from walking back and forth, they actually make these dirt highways like you see right here. And they just kind of walk, from the beach, walk to the colony and back, and they have these defined paths. And this was actually one of them. And you've got, the mountains in the background. It came out really well. And it was just one of these where I guess I'll take a picture, and I, raised the camera to my eye and just took the shot. So it came out really well.
Really nice.
That's great when that works out. Yeah, a couple things I absolutely love about this. Obviously, this is a great landscape on its own. But having this extra little group of penguins over here to kind of give you that triangular funnel that kind of leads right into the gentle curving back there, it really all just comes together. So, great job on the composition for as kind of almost snapshotty as you described that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott, any other questions?
Yeah, that's you said something about Lord of the Rings. This looks like this looks like the Shire.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, there's more rockhoppers kind of jumping off rocks, and with that light, that one was just doing a shake. I thought that was pretty cool. They
It
would
is.
preen. They'd come out of the seawater, and there was a little like pool of water. They'd jump in the pool, they kind of bathe around, then they get out of the pool and they would shake. And then I would just, I had the 1DX Mark II, so that's 14 frames a second. I just laid the hammer down when they would shake, and this one I really liked.
Yeah, that
And it
was
was kind
cool.
Yeah, Josh, you mentioned like the sunset being one of your favorite moments. Can you, if you had to define one moment where you just thought that was the moment of the trip, what would you say, or what picture kind of defines the trip?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few that come to mind, but I think the one that defines the trip for me is probably the king penguin shot with the pastel colors when they were coming out of the water. We touched on that one a little earlier. It's right next to, actually, the 2 down from that one. It was more of the sequence rather maybe than the individual shot. This shot, and they were coming in, and we just had all different lighting situations. It was just, it was amazing. The light, we knew the light was going to be good. We got up, it was 3:30, and we saw this little, actually there's a video of it. I think if you go to the videos, there was a orange ring coming up on the horizon. And I looked at Sujinder, I'm like, we got to get out there. We were tired as hell because we shot the night before. We didn't get into bed probably until midnight. If you scroll up, I think that's it. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, that's yeah. So this was walking down, and I saw a few king penguins along the water there, and you could see, the sun and the glow, and like we start running.
Yeah, for sure.
We just shot for a few hours. It was incredible. I had to pinch myself after that morning because every once in a while you get the light, but to get the subjects along with the light and everything kind of come together was just, it was a really, these were all taken on the same morning.
Yeah, that's I was just gonna say
special moment.
the variety there is just
Amazing.
incredible. Yeah. So kudos to you on that. Nice job on, not getting set on one specific style or look and just continuing to shoot that. You obviously did some available light stuff here, mixed in the flash at different levels, turned off the flash and kept the color and went with some silhouettes. So it's all too easy in any scenario, especially a time crunch pressure scenario where this light isn't going to be there that long, and you're it's not like you can go back next week and try again. It's all too easy to get set on, like, all right, you start shooting here and then you got some settings and you just keep shooting and you don't think to change anything. But you obviously thought well past that and changed a lot of things. So congratulations on that.
Yeah,
and a nice set came from that.
Yeah, thanks. I had to thank Sujinder because right before we were packing, we were exchanging notes around what we're bringing. He's like, I wonder if we should bring a flash. And I said, probably not. The lights on. He's like, I think you should bring, I said, all right, I'll throw one in there. Thank God.
Yeah, right.
Flash.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really funny. If you went back, is there anything you think you'd do differently in hindsight now after having spent some time there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd probably do more on the backlighting end of things when it comes to composition.
Okay.
The light was so good that, that one shot, actually, that the Rockhopper that was backlit we had before, the one I was talking about that you helped me with, Ray, I just think there were a lot of opportunities. I probably would have, if I ever get back there, do more of that stuff. Maybe bring a fisheye,
Nice.
maybe play around with that for some interesting compositions. But, knowing what I know now, it's kind of nice because you have a head start. When we really winged it when we went down there, we didn't know what to expect. So this was kind of, a first attempt. We were happy. I mean, we read some literature, and a lot of people go down to the Falklands, tour guides and the like, and they say, well, if you get king penguins on the beach in the morning with good light, consider yourself very lucky. Well, my God, we got them all over the place. So either we were really lucky, or just went to the wrong spot. One of the two. I would probably focus more on the backlighting stuff, more on mammals. I was so encaptured with the penguins. That's kind of the big, and the skuas, I guess, to a certain extent. But you don't focus as much on the mammals like the sea lions. So maybe focus a little bit more on the mammals.
Cool.
I think it's southern fur seal is down there too.
Nice.
So I'd probably do that as well.
Nice. Cool. So
Awesome.
I want to mention something. I want to touch on a point that you mentioned that about backlighting, and I find this all the time, even up here with my own shooting. That when you have great light like this, it is very difficult to consciously decide to put the sun behind your subject and start shooting backlight, because it's like the most amazing front light, gorgeous golden hour light shining on your subject. It's a difficult decision to actually get on the other side and start pointing into the sun. But when you can make it work like this, it definitely can be worth it. But like you said, it's a tough thing to do. And then I do want to ask about this shot, because this one's one that I keep coming back to, just because I know how wide it is and probably how close that was. To see, knowing how these cameras work. You shot it at 35 millimeter at f13, and there's still some fall off of focus, so the background's actually getting a little soft. That means you were ridiculously close to this bird.
Yeah, the bird almost hit my lens, and it was kind of funny. The shots that you showed before, where the two birds were interacting, they're on the cliff with. That was actually the same sequence. One of the birds actually dropped off and flew away, so I decided to crawl a little closer. This is the black-browed albatross. It looked at me. It kind of just squatted down like that and just started peeking in, and like it almost looked like it was smelling me. It was incredible. So I was like, oh my God. The only thing I wish I love this shot. The only thing I wish is if I were angled a little more to the right, and I would have been able to kind of get more of kind of the landscape to the right of the bird.
Gotcha.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm only picking at this point. It was just surreal to see it and have it happen.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey man, thank you for all this. I just want to read a couple of comments here. We got looks surreal, really cool shots. Thanks for taking us along. This is fabulous. Thanks for sharing the most amazing adventure with us. Absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. Super photography, Josh. Thanks for sharing your experience at the Falklands. So a lot of great feedback, and thank you for taking your time to kind of share this incredible experience with all of us.
Great. No, thank you. It was just so much fun. And the one thing I'll say to folks, a lot of times, people will look at this and say, wow, that's really exotic. And, it's almost impossible to get to. And, it really wasn't that difficult. We decided to shoot at 2 locations. Once you get there, you have a lot of these wide open spaces to yourself. It's really not that out of reach. So you want to consider, going someplace a little further off the map. I would definitely recommend this. It's in a way, it's a once in a lifetime experience. It's something I'll never forget. So don't be afraid to venture out and try the Falklands if you ever want to get there. So.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, and before we go, because we've been trying to do something at the end of each broadcast, each segment. So I'm going to switch gears on Josh. So not only is Josh a great photographer, he's a pretty good birder. So we're getting into migration season. So I came up with a little game called Stump Josh.
Oh, nice.
So the way this works is, Josh, I'm going to play you a warbler call.
Oh, nice.
And you, sir, have got to try to identify this. Now I'm going to keep it easy. I'm going to keep these with birds that are in this region. And it's amazing because I've been off of this for a while, and it's amazing at the beginning of the season how bad you are at this.
Oh, yeah, I suck at it right now. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that I get you on a few of these.
Yeah.
All right.
So here's the first one.
Okay. Oh, damn. Was that it?
Yeah, I only heard a single chirp.
All right, I'm going to say black and white warbler.
Black and white warbler is correct, sir.
Hey-o,
All right,
nice.
very nice. All right, we got number 2.
Okay.
Back it up from
Blue-winged
the
warbler.
speaker a little there.
He only needed one time on that one. Blue-winged warbler is correct.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice.
All right, he's going to get these. I got another one here.
One more time, Alex.
Ooh. have a guess.
I'm leaning with magnolia warbler on that.
Is that hooded?
Oh wait, we no, I'm sorry, hooded warbler.
Hooded warbler.
Ooh.
Very good.
Hooded.
All right, let's see. Got one more here. This is one of my favorite birds.
I know it.
1 more time.
Okay.
It sounds like a Nashville because it has a trail.
Let me give a guess before you tell them, Scott.
All right, go ahead. You can guess, Ray.
Cerulean?
Cerulean warbler is correct. Was that Ray?
That was, yeah.
Yeah, Ray got it.
Ray came in with the cerulean warbler. 75%, still a passing grade. Galicki, nice job.
Not bad at all. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and watching tonight. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Scott. You guys have anything to say before we sign off?
No, thanks again for having me. I really love doing these talks with you guys, and hopefully everybody enjoyed the photos. And if you ever want to get to the Falklands and you have questions, reach out. Let me know.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I guess, Ray, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
You got it, man. That's the deal. So 2 Wednesdays from now, we're not positive of our guest host or our guest or our topic yet, but as soon as we know, we will announce it, and hope to have you then. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.